Right now, the day's biggest news stories from a Vegas perspective. This is the Vegas Take with Sharp and Shapiro.
What's up, everybody? The Vegas Take back at you on a Tuesday. Sharp and Shapiro, glad you could join us. Oh, yeah, nothing like a good rock and roll to wake up in the morning. A lot to get to today. Obviously, this is the second-year anniversary of, the worst mass shooting in American history that happened in our backyard, and we are going to be covering it from top to bottom. Coming up here in just a few minutes at the bottom of the hour, we're going to be speaking to a gentleman who was there, who worked at one of the stations and still does here in this building, who was there that night. He's going to be telling his story. Also, Terry Keener is a social worker with the Vegas Strong Resiliency Center, dealing with many of the victims, families, friends who every day have to deal with what took place here 2 years ago. So we'll be getting to that as well. I do want to mention this because this is breaking news, and we'll probably be speaking more about it later in the program. We covered it yesterday. We've been talking about it. This is the former Dallas police officer Amber Geiger trial, who shot an unarmed man thinking that she went into her apartment when it wasn't hers, killed this man. Well, guess what? A verdict is just in, and she is guilty not of manslaughter, but of murder. This is a surprise to me. I think it's a shock to many people that have been covering this case. A lot of people thought she'd be getting manslaughter charges, murder charges. That could be up to 99 years in prison. So she is going away for a while. So we'll continue to monitor this story. I certainly have some strong opinions on that. But guys, I was driving into work today. It's a very short commute. It's about a few blocks, so I'm not listening to the radio very long. But I listened to a few stations, and, one station talking about Monday Night Football, talking NFL. Another station talking a little Vegas Golden Knights, which is fine, by the way. And I want to announce that the Vegas Golden Knights president will be on in hour number 3 today. Kerry Buboltz will be talking about some of the great things they're doing today to honor the October 1 victims and first responders. So I'm listening to some of these shows, and like I said, they're talking Monday Night Football, and which is fine. They're talking NFL, which is fine. But that's not what we do here. That's why we're the Vegas Take. We talk about national issues, but we also hit a lot of the big issues that hit home here. And 2 years ago, when you have the worst mass shooting in American history, I think it's important that you cover it. So I want to hear from you guys out there. This is a show that is just as much about you than anybody. It's about you guys that are listening, and I want to hear your stories, your October 1 stories. Everybody in this town that I talked to, and I mean everybody, knew somebody that was down there that fateful day. They know a responder that was down there. Maybe it was a police officer. Maybe it's an employee at Mandalay Bay. Or unfortunately, maybe it's somebody that that was hurt or even killed that terrible day. And we want to hear your stories and what you remember about that day, this being 2 years. And it's incredible that it has been 2 years since this shooting. And I don't want to say that people forget, because they should never forget, but it seems like life as usual. We talk a lot about that parking lot. It's turned now into a parking lot for pay. Yeah, is there going to be a memorial there? Absolutely. But this is rough stuff. This is sad stuff. And I want this to hit home to many of you, and we have some audio that I think it's important that we should play. This gentleman's name is Joe Robbins. I feel so sorry for this man who lost his daughter. Or son. Quentin Robbins. And he was speaking at the Sunrise Remembrance ceremony earlier this morning. Again, this is a father that lost his son, Quentin, 2 years ago.
None of us want those who lost to be forgotten. Many, if not all of us, would like to channel this dreadful experience into something beneficial, something that helps make our society a better place. There is so much anger, evil, and sorrow in the world, and we must do our part to make life better for others. We must be the good. Tens of thousands of acts of kindness have been performed, countless events have been held, dedications have been made, and several families have created foundations, as did we. All to respect, remember, and honor the 58 lives that were gone too soon.
Yeah, and he's absolutely right. And I can't imagine the pain and the suffering that this father has to go through every day. Also, Governor Steve Sisolak speaking today, talking a little bit about, the lives that were lost during the October 1 shooting.
After the tragedy, 2 years ago today, many around the country remarked on the strength of the Vegas community, almost as if they were surprised that Las Vegas is, in fact, a tight-knit community. The nation discovered what we knew all along, that beyond the neon signs, we are a city of neighbors that look out for each other, that have each other's backs, that have an immense pride in the place that we call home. That we are, and we have always been, Vegas strong. The difference now, though, is that 2 years after that horrible night, we are Vegas stronger. It might be painful to remember, but our strength comes from the will to never forget. Thank you all, and God bless each and every one of you.
So, first of all, let me just say that I appreciate the governor being passionate, being emotional. I think that's a good thing. I'm sure some people out there will criticize politicians for being emotional, but I think he was speaking from the heart. I know he was. He's lived here for such a long time, and I appreciate his passion. And I think he's done a very good job of showing leadership in the days, months, and now years after this shooting. So kudos to him, for Steve Sisolak. You could disagree with some of his policies. You could make the case that, he hasn't done enough in regards to gun violence, but I commend him on a day like today for showing a lot of leadership. And I want to hear your stories out there. Where were you that day? I alluded to this a little bit yesterday, that I went to the Vegas Golden Knights game on October 1 2 years ago. It was a preseason NHL game, and I'm going to share this with the Golden Knights president. And if I didn't go to that game, I might have been at this concert. I was invited by several people. I don't like country music, but a friend of mine was shot that night, and her life will never be the same.
And knowing you would have been probably first 5 rows.
Well, I do like to be.
You would have been right near the front.
I do like to. That's true. I do like to be close to these concerts. I'm a little bit spoiled. That's a very valid point. And a lot of the people that were injured, a lot of the people that were killed, were right there. Right? Correct me if I'm wrong. A lot of them were right in front there at the
Absolutely.
stage. Yeah. The thing that really frustrates me is, and I'm drawing a blank here, but the guy that was on stage.
His name is Jason Aldean.
Yeah. Okay. And I don't want to listen. I don't want to bash this guy. Okay. I'm sure it's very traumatizing for him that he was on stage and many of his fans lost their lives. But why has he not come back here and done a benefit concert? Why has he not come back here and done some sort of charity event? I know the following day he went to the hospital. I'm sorry, Aldean, that's not enough. It's not enough. We remember these concerts like the concert right in Paris where so many people lost their lives. And, there was a huge benefit concert.
Especially, he was the headliner of this event, so people were there.
Yeah.
He's one of the main reasons why people were there, and you saw what Ariana Grande did.
That's what I was just talking about. Ariana Grande, I have a lot of respect for her, for what she did and the way she handled that whole situation. I thought it was a fantastic event that she put together. Why has Jason Aldean not come back to this town and done a benefit concert, or not even a concert, something? I'll tell you what Jason Aldean is doing now. He's touring and he's making a lot of money.
He makes about $1.4 million every show.
Nobody can defend that. It is disgusting that he has not come back here and done more. And I am going to call him out for that, and I don't care if you're a Jason Aldean fan or not. The fact that he hasn't come back out here and done something, taken one day of his life to come back here and raise money. I don't charge $20, $30, and all the proceeds go towards the victims and their families.
Here's what I want to know. Was he paid? Was he compensated for that performance?
I don't know. I would imagine he probably was, but it's disgusting.
I know that he got at least 50% down, and he's probably owed another $700,000 the day that he showed up. But assuming that he was compensated, why would he not just give all that money to the victims?
I don't know. All I got to say is I have no respect for him. I really don't.
I mean,
I'm sorry.
It's very hard to.
Yeah,
it really is.
Yeah, there's many great people that have done so many wonderful things after the October 1 shooting. Well, guess what? He ain't one of them. He ain't one of them. But anyway, to finish my story, I went to the Knights game that night and went with a friend of mine, Chris Chapman, who works with another station here in town, good guy. And, I'm driving after the game. It was one of those early starts. I think it was like a 4 p.m. start or something. So I got out of the game a little earlier. I drive home, grab some dinner, and then all of a sudden my phone starts blowing up. And people are saying, hey, you got to put on the TV, bro. You know? So I put on the television. I'm watching CNN and Fox News, and I don't think anybody really comprehended how big this was and how horrible it was. You know, I'm thinking, even when I saw the original video, I'm like, oh, some idiot is spraying some bullets. Sadly, you know, a couple people might have lost their lives. So I'm monitoring. I'm like, well, this is bad. And then as the hours progressed, and we saw reporters, national reporters from Fox News and CNN and MSNBC and all the big networks coming out here, we learned this is more than just a shooting that killed a few people. And then I'm seeing body bags. This is live video. I'm seeing body bags and bodies, dead bodies. And I'm thinking, oh, my God. And then we're learning in the hours after and in the middle of the night, because I kept the TV on throughout. I'm watching this. And we learn, oh, they're saying that there's a shooter on one of the floors of Mandalay Bay. And I'm like, oh, my God, this is terrorism. What's going on here? And then you learn more and more information as the hours surpass. Now, our producer, Jason Stein, was working at a TV station there in Wisconsin. And, Jason, I know that this was obviously a huge story that wasn't just that night, but for weeks after the shooting. I mean, CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, all the big networks. Sean Hannity was doing his show from here. Anderson Cooper was. They all were here because, again, it is the biggest mass shooting in the history of the country. So how did you handle that? How did you handle, handling this news that came out that night when you got into work that day?
I worked overnights, and for the early morning show, I came in, and it got word that there was another shooting. First thought was, if it's in Vegas, this is like the worst fear come true. This is something I've had in the back of my, and not even living here, but just a thought of how Vegas is such a soft target when we talk about terrorism. So I had that, Brian, that same thought that maybe this is terrorism, and that the terrorists had gone after the soft target, which has always been a fear. But no, I mean, even in local news, no matter where you are, whether you're in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, or on the East Coast or anywhere else, news is, global. I mean, it's become a smaller, audience. That's not what I want to say. It's not a smaller audience. It's that if something happens in Vegas or anywhere else, it affects you just as much, I think, in another place. So how we covered it, we went wall to wall on it. And I watched it unfold in real time. And the numbers, I just remember the death toll growing throughout the morning, and just realizing then the scope of this and how bad it really was. The one thing also that bothered me is how the networks covered it. Now, there's a difference between local TV station and the network.
Right.
And I was watching all of the networks, whether it be CNN, NBC, ABC, whatever. They all opened up their coverage with what they call in television is called NAT sound, natural sound. Off the top, the sound of gunfire. The sound of gunfire. They sensationalized it. They made it like a movie almost. Mm-hmm. Gunfire, people running and screaming. That's how the national news covered it.
Which I thought is disgusting. If
I
you
thought
want to
so
show
too.
If you want to show it once, fine. But they replayed the firing of bullets over and over and over again. People screaming over. It's like, how many times do you have to play it?
Right.
Okay? It's breaking news. Play the video you got. Stop replaying it over and over again and sensationalizing it. This is no movie. 58 people have lost their lives. Yeah. And I don't agree with that. I don't agree with the way they covered that at all.
And, even some local stations had that pressure from management to, let's make this as, exciting as possible. I did my very best, and the people that I worked with, we did our very best to be respectful about it. And you walk a line because if overnight we've got brand new video of the gunfire and people running, you're kind of obligated to show that to people. But you don't have to. It's how you use it.
But not in a loop. Over
you don't.
And
You don't
over
have
again.
to. You're right.
Yeah.
You don't have to go over the top with it. And so, but yeah, no. I mean, I think after a while you just become numb to these things. I walked in on a weekend shift one time when the Pulse shooting happened.
Right.
And so it was just, wow, another mass shooting in America. But this one was different. This was the biggest. This one was in Vegas.
Right.
And so it definitely is something I will always remember.
I want to open up the calls on this. I want to get your stories. Where were you on October 1?
Would you like my story, Brian?
Yes, I would like your story.
Okay.
Where were you on October 1? What do you remember? What's your personal story? Do you know somebody that's a first responder? Are you a first responder? Police, medical. Do you know somebody at Mandalay Bay? Do you know somebody that was hurt? Give us a call, 257-5396. Again, that number to call, 702-257-5396. We want to hear from you. So, JD, where were you on October 1, and what do you remember about what happened?
So I was actually at home, but I lived in Turnberry Place, which is
Next to the Strip.
next to the Westgate,
Right.
the high rise next to the Westgate. So I
Right.
actually was hearing the sirens. I could actually hear the sirens from my home when we had the screen door open, and it was probably maybe 9:30, 10 o'clock when I heard, and I just stayed up for 4 or 5 hours with my wife and paid attention to the news. But it wasn't so much that night; it was the coming days after that, because they didn't catch anybody for a while. There was no news of who the shooter was. There was rumors that it was a terrorist thing, and people were talking about how, I mean, when I was at the mall the next day at the fashion show mall, and someone had sent me a message about how there was a potential shooter on the loose, and there's more shooters involved, because they didn't really know the details, and so there's a lot of fear over the next few days, and that was the part that I really remembered the most, was the uncertainty about who was actually responsible for this. I'm sure they knew, but they didn't tell us for quite some time.
Well, that night, there were rumors of who the shooter was, and actually that night I posted a picture up on Facebook of Paddock, who actually was the shooter. Now, they were rumors. It was not confirmed. But, I got some tips from some people that were trying to figure out what was going on, and one reporter that I know, I got a picture of this guy, and then we got a picture of his girlfriend, who he wired $100,000 to,
Right.
who I still don't believe to this very day had no idea what was going on. When he had all that artillery in his home, and she was living with him, and you're telling me that she had no idea what he was planning, I don't buy that for a second. That's just my opinion. I'm not a conspiracy theorist here, but I do believe there were people, probably his girlfriend, that knew that he had gone AWOL. We'll take some phone calls on this one. 257-5396, the number to call. Why don't we start off with Stephen? Stephen, thanks for calling into the Vegas Take. Stephen, are you there? Stephen, are you there? Can you hear us?
No, I guess you aren't hearing me.
Yeah, I hear you now, Stephen. What's going on?
What's up,
Okay,
Steve?
great. Well, I've had a little involvement with this. I too knew a investigative reporter. I'll give you her name if you'd like to have it. She's readily available in the internet. I followed through on the first 3 days after the press conferences that the sheriff had. Following the communications that she had with intelligence people throughout the world,
Yes.
as they discussed what the sheriff had reported during the press conference. And each of the first 3 days, somewhere in between, I don't recall the exact times. I wasn't watching it that importantly or that closely. Somewhere between 4 and 6 hours of each of the first 3 days. It seemed like the intelligence operatives that were evaluating what we'd been told by the sheriff said that the sheriff, it was pretty obvious that the sheriff either didn't know the facts or he was lying.
Well, I don't think he was lying. I think you're right on the first account. I don't think he had all the facts. And listen, I also
okay.
Yeah.
Let me finish though.
Yeah.
The fourth day, she didn't receive notice that they were going to have the press conference like she had for the first three, but she was able to show up anyway. And then, of course, everybody learned why at the fourth scheduled press conference. The sheriff, it was really short. The sheriff said, "Look, if you people aren't going to believe whatever we tell you, we just aren't going to have any more press conferences."
I remember
anymore.
that, and I don't think he handled that very well. And I think there were a lot of mistakes that were
I think you're very
made.
charitable, Brian. I thought it was actually a good move. I guess my guess is he was elected as sheriff, so he ought to get paid for that. But I don't think we should have to pay to have him lie to us.
Well, there's no proof that he intentionally lied. That's my problem, Stephen. There's no proof that he intentionally lied. Certainly mistakes were made. It was an emotional time. He was at a very high stress level. And, we'll talk about more about this on the other side of the break. We got plenty of other callers on the line. Marge, Juliet. Hang on. We'll take your calls on the other side. But to say that he intentionally lied I'm not about to do that. I think mistakes were made. I think facts were hidden to the public for a little while in regards to the timeline and what took place at Mandalay Bay. But to say that he intentionally lied, no. I'm not going to sit here and I'm not going to do that. So we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll take more of your calls. We want to hear your stories on October 1. What do you remember what took place 2 years ago? The number to call if you want to be a part of that, 257-5396. Again, 702-257-5396. We're going to get the president of the Vegas Golden Knights that's going to be coming on our show. We're going to get somebody from the Vegas Strong Resiliency Center that is going to be coming on. And we're going to get your personal stories on the other side of the break at 257-5396. Be back right after this. You're listening to the Vegas Take.